When Feodor Chaliapin made his debut here in the title role of Boito's Mephistopheles, he electrified the audience by appearing in the prologue stripped to the waist and the upper half of his body covered with luminous paint. The public immediately sensed it was in the presence of a genius. The critics were scandalized. Aghast at Chaliapin's disgusting frankness, the Tribune next morning said, "He's bestiality incarnate," and calls to mind more than anything else the vulgarity of conduct which his countryman Gorky presents in his pictures of Russian lowlife. And this is what he sounded like in Mephistopheles' famous whistling song, Son lo spirito che nega, I'm the spirit that denies, recorded in actual performance.
Son lo spirito che nega sempre tutto, l'altro è mio, il mio Dio e la mia vega, turbano gli occhi al Creator. Voglio il nulla ed il creato, la guida universale, l'atmosfera mia vital, l'atmosfera mia vital, ciò che chiama sì. Ciò che chiama di peccato, ciò che chiama di peccato, ciò che chiama di peccato, la morte mai. Urrà, aperto questa sillaba. No. Strico, eterno, no.
Chaliapin had made something of a specialty of demonology. The figure I dreamed of presenting, he wrote of his evil one, was of iron, metallic, mighty. Gounod's as well as Boito's Mephisto were among the four roles he sang here in 1978. Again he smashed tradition, made his own rules, and here's his way with the second stanza of Mephisto's Serenade.
Nobda nobis emma mia, calabago dua, nobis emma mia, calabago dua, calabag.
Have you noticed in the Barber of Seville that every Don Basilio you see now carries a red calico handkerchief? This may be because Chaliapin, when doing the role, further alienated the press by using the sleeve of his cassock. Don Basilio is a type I know, he protested. He's not like the modern American priest, clean and well-groomed. He's a beast, and that's what I make him, a comic beast, but the critics would prefer a softer version.
Leggermente e dolce
The critics tore even his singing to pieces. A Cossack with a cold, one gentleman of the press called Chaliapin, and further accused him of continually snarling and barking. Yet Gustav Mahler accepted him as Leporello in a cast which included Scotti as Don Giovanni, Ames as Donna Anna, Gadsky as Donna Elvira, and Sembrick, later Farrar, as Zelina.
Il catalogo è questo, delle belle che voi il mio, il governo cogliemo va Dio. Osservate, leggete con me, osservate, leggete con me. In Italia 640, in Almania 231, 100 in Francia, in Turchia 91,
How long did he study the art of singing, the New York Sun demanded. Surely not many years. They were right. Chaliapin didn't have to study singing any more than Mozart had to study composition. The New York Sun, he thundered, should be banished from the minds of all lovers of truth and freedom. He left after one season, vowing never to return. It took more than a dozen years to change his mind. Fyodor Ivanovich Chaliapin was born in Kazan. Life was raw in Kazan. It would take a Dostoevsky to do credit to the poverty and hardships of his early life. His father was a drunkard who beat his mother regularly on the 20th of every month. That was the day he got paid and the vodka supply replenished. The beatings grew more frequent, and at 7, Fyodor Ivanovich was apprenticed to a cobbler in the same street where Maxim Gorky was working in a baker's cellar. He became a woodcarver, bookbinder, pawnbroker's clerk, novice in a monastery of the Russian Church, and a longshoreman on the Volga at 17 cents a day. At 17, he joined a traveling troupe. By the time he was 26, he'd made the Imperial Opera in Moscow. His first appearance outside Russia was in Milan under Toscanini. Diaghilev introduced him to Paris, Sir Thomas Beecham to London. Everywhere, he swept everything before him. 6'4", blond and blue-eyed, Chaliapin was a giant in personality as well as in body, and he walked with giants. He sang for Tolstoy. Richard Strauss and Rachmaninoff were glad to play his accompaniments. Rachmaninoff taught him many of his roles, and in return, Chaliapin offered to teach Rachmaninoff how to bow, but nothing came of it. The great pianist, who looked solemn as an undertaker, should greet his audience, Chaliapin felt, with at least one warm smile. Fedya knew how, Rachmaninoff said. He was a bass, but he took his bows like a tenor. The 1917 revolution caught Chaliapin in Russia. He was allowed to leave in 1921 to sing for famine relief. He was beyond politics. Once he horrified the last Tsar by singing a revolutionary song in public, but when the Soviet government tried to collect on his earnings abroad, Chaliapin sent a check for the full amount he had on deposit in a confiscated bank. This did not endear him to the commissars. His title of People's Artist was revoked, and his property confiscated. The title was later restored, and he was offered the use of his estates, but he never went back. At his concerts, you never knew what you were going to hear. You could buy a word book in the lobby with the texts of about 100 songs. The great man would then thumb through it and call out the number of what he was about to sing as the spirit moved him. This is the end of number 25, When the King Went Forth to War. Note the sustained upper E natural taken pianissimo at the end.
Ветер песню спел пустак, и звенело, летя дубравами, колоколю доли
Back in New York, he had the critics eating from his hand as Boris Godunov. Since there are no words adequate to describe this performance, perhaps the greatest single impersonation in all opera, let's settle for a fragment of the death scene, again recorded in actual performance.
Вот, царь ваш, царь, простите, простите.
Chaliapin played his final death scene in Paris, April 12, 1938. He was 65 years old. It's hard to think of that great frame wasted by anemia. His son, the painter, Boris Chaliapin, is authority for his last words. "I begin to disappear," he said. Could he have been thinking of Boris's line, "The Tsar withdraws to God"? And then he said a remarkable thing. It was evidently the start of something he was unable to finish. He said Russian theater, and then he repeated it, Russian theater. Feodor Chaliapin, whose entire life had been one great drama, whose whole being was the theater. Those were his dying words. The twofold litany of Godunov, which he's singing here with the choir of the Russian cathedral in Paris, was performed at his funeral. In every homesick Russian, something of himself died with Chaliapin. Perhaps the most touching tribute came from Michael Fokine, the great choreographer and reformer of the ballet. His spirit, Fokine said, hovered in a world far from ours.